On the 19th of March 2016, I received an urgent call for an emergency dive. Usually my dives involve forensic work or rescue missions, but this time it was unlike anything I'd encountered before. Normally, when I'm called out, there's a clear and pressing reason. Someone's life is in danger, or there's a time-sensitive object that needs to be recovered. But this time, the purpose was shrouded in mystery. I was abruptly awoken in the dead of night, with no prior warning, and whisked away to Greenbrier Valley, West Virginia. The journey was surreal, driving down a desolate dirt road flanked by a convoy of government vehicles. Amidst the confusion, I could make out insignias from various agencies: the United States Army Corps of Engineers, USACE, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, the United States Geological Survey, USGS, and the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources, WVDNR. Yet, amidst the chaos, there were unmarked vehicles and some with dubious claims of being unrelated businesses. Upon arrival, the scene was frenetic. People were frantically engaged with their phones or engaged in heated debates. One particularly agitated individual, a middle-aged man, was practically pleading with a young woman, brandishing documents while she simply nodded and smiled. As I navigated through the crowd, I was bombarded with questions. How long until you're ready? Did you bring your equipment? Where's the sign-in sheet? Amidst the chaos, I spotted familiar faces like Garrett, recently turned 44, and Nora, with whom I had collaborated on previous rescue dives. However, the gravity of the situation was palpable, unlike anything we had faced together. Amidst the chaos, I was handed some documents to sign, while overhearing a tense exchange between a USAS representative and a stern woman in a professional suit. "You have 12 hours, she declared firmly. "Not a second longer. This is private property." Finally settling down next to Garrett, I began to prepare. "Someone needs to fill me in," I insisted, feeling increasingly bewildered by the unfolding events. "It's an earthquake," Nora explained, her voice tinged with apprehension. "Not a major one, but it's causing some unusual activity." Garrett added cryptically, "It's the lake. You'll understand when we get there." As I struggled into my diving gear, I was ushered forward, my arm firmly gripped as we trudged through the forest. Questions continued to barrage me, drowning out any opportunity for clarity. When we emerged into a forest clearing, the sight that greeted us was nothing short of astonishing. The serene lake we expected to find had transformed into something unrecognizable. The drained lake revealed a desolate landscape of mud, devoid of water save for a small pool at the center. Seagulls swarmed, their cacophony of screeches echoing across the barren expanse as they feasted on the hapless fish stranded in the muck. Men clad in hazmat suits struggled to shoo away the birds, their efforts only serving to exacerbate the slippery conditions as they slid back and forth in the sludge. Amidst the chaos, the focal point of attention was the gaping hole in the lake bed, measuring roughly 6 by 4 feet. Surrounding it were makeshift workstations adorned with laptops, where a dozen individuals furiously tapped away, engrossed in their calculations and measurements. A mysterious woman materialized from the throng, her presence commanding and decisive as she pushed us forward. Her urgency was palpable as she informed us that we were to embark on a blind dive within the hour, emphasizing the need for constant communication regarding any observations we made. Garrett's objections were met with forceful retaliation as he was unceremoniously shoved into the mud by the woman, who adamantly insisted that we comply with her directives. Nora assisted Garrett to his feet, and we hastened towards the ominous hole at the lake's center. The air was thick with the pungent stench of decay, amplified by the rubber masks we wore to shield ourselves from the noxious odor. Despite the disarray, two men attempted to prepare us for the dive, though their efforts were hampered by the lack of a cohesive plan or understanding of the subterranean conditions. All we knew was the staggering magnitude of the underground cavern system, revealed by the seismic activity, 350 feet wide and plunging 700 feet into the Earth's depths. It was a daunting prospect to comprehend, let alone navigate. In the midst of our preparations, we established a rudimentary diving protocol, limited to 20-minute intervals with a 25-minute resurfacing period. Air tanks would be rotated, and constant communication with the surface would be maintained at all times. We agreed upon a strict contingency plan, ready to abort the mission at the slightest indication of trouble.
Yet amidst the flurry of activity, uncertainty lingered. We grappled with the enigmatic circumstances, our understanding of the situation tenuous at best. With a mere 12 hours before our forced departure from the site, the urgency of our mission weighed heavily upon us, overshadowed by the looming specter of unknown perils lurking in the depths below. This cave system seemed untouched for possibly tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years. Some even mentioned the Karoo Ice Age, but that seemed unlikely. We weren't sure if exploring it would be worth it or a waste of time. We were about 1 to 2 hours into the countdown when we finally dipped our toes in the water. As I sat on the edge, the water felt much colder than expected. A technician checked my air tanks while expressing envy at our exploration. Nora cautioned that uncharted territory isn't always a good thing, drawing on her experience exploring the ocean floor. We descended into the murky water, visibility hindered by mud and reeds. The water grew colder with each foot, and I felt like I was driving through a rainstorm with particles whizzing past. A sense of unease settled in my chest. I'd never felt so unprepared for a dive. We reached the cave bottom at about 25 feet, encountering rough, sharp walls with a thin crystal layer, likely salt. As anonymous voices buzzed in our ears, we mapped out 3 tunnels. The first was too narrow, risking equipment snagging, so we opted for a larger one, though it was still more crawling than swimming. We received a seismic warning but found only granite and quartz, leading Garrett to deem it pointless. We agreed to resurface to check for samples in the cracks. In a small cave, Nora found transparent goo in a crack, while Garrett attempted to chisel off granite. I thought I saw something shimmering, but it was just light reflecting off quartz. Still, I took it, not wanting to return empty-handed. Though slow and methodical, we made progress. Realizing we wouldn't reach the bottom in 12 hours, we aimed for interesting finds with each dive. Upon resurfacing, we were met by a crowd of curious onlookers. The men in hazmat suits arrived with coolers for our collected samples, while technicians busied themselves with setting up an air hose system. We took a brief respite to allow them to finish their work, swap out our air tanks, and strategize for our next descent. With the newly installed air hoses capable of reaching depths of 60 feet, Garrett insisted on replenishing our air tanks as an added precaution.
As we connected the air hoses, the stagnant chemical air from our tanks was replaced by the earthy scent of the forest, mingled with the faint aroma of diesel emanating from the on-site generators. With renewed supplies and determination, we submerged once more into the murky depths, our sights set on exploring the labyrinthine tunnels below. Navigating through the thick vegetation and muddy terrain, we pressed forward, mapping out 3 additional tunnels that promised to lead us deeper into the cavernous underworld. Yet as Nora attempted to establish communication for a longer line, a troubling silence greeted our inquiries from the surface. It became evident that our current depth had compromised our ability to maintain a stable connection. Garrett proposed ascending to relay the message, but Nora balked at the notion of tugging on the air hose, fearing potential damage or dislodging. Suddenly, our communication channels erupted with static, interrupting our deliberations and prompting Nora to signal for an immediate ascent. As we hastily retraced our path towards the surface, ominous rumblings emanated from the depths below, signaling an impending catastrophe. Without warning, the tunnel surrounding us began to collapse, severing our air hoses and inflicting a grievous injury upon Nora as debris rained down upon us. Amidst the chaos and rising waters, a sense of panic gripped me as I struggled to maintain my bearings. With each passing moment, the diminishing supply of air and the relentless force of the rushing water threatened to overwhelm us, casting us into the abyssal depths with no respite in sight. In the tumultuous chaos, I found myself tossed about like a rag doll, colliding with unforgiving walls and feeling the cold embrace of water flooding into my mask. As the darkness closed in around me, a profound sense of helplessness engulfed me, leaving me disoriented and gasping for air amidst the relentless onslaught of the collapsing tunnel. The suction wasn't like a quick pull. It dragged on for what felt like forever. I was tossed around, banged against rocks so many times I lost count. I could feel blood seeping out of me, mixing with the cold water, making me shiver even more. I couldn't tell if I was getting colder from the blood loss or just from the water around me. Then suddenly, everything stopped. I found myself floating in darkness, feeling completely lost. It was so dark I couldn't tell which way was up or down. I tried to swim upwards, but something didn't feel right. It took me a moment to realize I was actually swimming downwards. I was upside down, and there was water filling up my mask, right under my mouth. I had to spit constantly to keep it clear. It tasted weird, like a mix of sugar and metal, mostly blood. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, something grabbed me. My first instinct was to fight back, but I was too weak. My left arm hurt too much, and my left foot was messed up. I was shaking, and I saw a big cut on my leg. I could barely see anything in the darkness. Then Garrett appeared. He made some hand signals I didn't recognize at first, a closed fist with fingers pushing outwards. It took me a moment to figure out he meant for me to exhale forcefully to clear my mask. After I did, he quickly connected my air tank to my mask. We couldn't talk because our communication was dead, so we relied on hand signals. Garrett checked my mask for cracks and gave me a signal asking if I was okay. I wasn't, but I signaled back that I was good enough to keep moving, even if it was slow. We held hands and started swimming upwards carefully. We didn't know how deep we were or how much air we had left. We estimated we had about an hour of air, but it could be less. We tried to keep calm, but it was hard. After what felt like forever, Garrett suddenly stopped. He pointed up, and I followed his gaze. There were little fish swimming past us. They were tiny, about 4 inches long and bright blue. But they were strange. They had no eyes, just a weird beak covering their whole face. They darted around us, trying to avoid us as much as possible. We kept moving upwards, hoping to find a way out. But after a while, we hit a solid rock ceiling. It was like hitting a wall. We looked around, but there was no opening or tunnel. We realized we might have come down sideways through a side passage, and now we were stuck. It felt like being trapped in a room with no doors. Garrett tried poking at the wall with his chisel and noticed it was slightly drifting to the left. That meant there was a current. It was a sign of hope, but it also meant we had no idea how much time had passed. We couldn't rely on our watches. They were broken or not set properly. It was a scary situation, and we felt more lost than ever. As we continued along the ceiling, it gradually began to curve, revealing a promising opening. With hope renewed, we ventured through the narrow passage, a tight squeeze that required me to exhale to pass through. Inch by inch, we pushed forward, the weight of unstable rocks bearing down on my chest. Finally, we emerged into an air pocket, a sanctuary amidst the oppressive darkness. Though it wasn't the surface, the pocket provided respite, allowing us to catch our breath. I was the first to shut off my air and clear my mask, followed swiftly by Garrett. With the stale yet sweet air filling our lungs, we could finally converse freely. Gasping for breath, Garrett explained how the lake water, stirred by the sunrise, had created a current, pushing us deeper than we could have imagined, possibly 300 feet or more. Thoughts turned to Nora, but Garrett confirmed she hadn't made it through the collapsing tunnel. Relief mingled with sorrow as we processed the grim reality. Despite the urgency of our situation, I insisted on pressing forward, unwilling to succumb to the confines of our subterranean prison. We assessed our supplies, finding them relatively intact, with enough air to sustain us for the foreseeable future. However, the injuries we sustained were cause for concern, with cuts and bruises demanding attention to prevent infection. Despite my trembling and Garrett's growing concern, we plunged back into the water, our equipment clean and secured. Navigating through the widening tunnels, we marked our progress with makeshift breadcrumbs, remnants of the torn air hose serving as our guide. Exploration led us down various paths, each presenting its own challenges and dead ends. The labyrinthine nature of the tunnels tested our resolve, weighing heavily on our spirits with each setback. Yet amidst the uncertainty, we pressed on, driven by a steadfast determination to find a way out. When we finally encountered a path leading forward, we faced a daunting decision: continue onward into the unknown or risk retracing our steps in search of another route. We faced a critical decision: retreat and regroup or press forward, risking both time and safety. Every moment spent going back felt like a loss, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Garrett sought guidance, and I signaled for us to continue forward. As we progressed, the tunnel transitioned into a vertical shaft, with a gentle rush of water hinting at a growing current. Suddenly, the water shimmered as hundreds of azure-colored fish darted past us, signaling a potential source or destination. Encouraged, we pressed onward. Branching tunnels greeted us, offering multiple paths into the unknown. With no means to mark our progress, we chose a tunnel at random and continued our ascent. But our hope was short-lived as Garrett halted, his gaze fixed on something shimmering ahead, an eerie dead end, or perhaps something more sinister. Before we could comprehend the threat, a nightmarish creature emerged from the darkness, long bone-like arms and needle-sharp teeth, a predatory menace unlike anything we had encountered. Its presence defied reason, driving us into a frantic frenzy of escape. In a desperate bid for survival, I disregarded all caution, pushing myself to the limits of physical exertion. Ignoring pain and exhaustion, I fled, haunted by the memory of Garrett's final moments, his wide-eyed terror etched into my mind. Navigating the labyrinthine tunnels, I raced onward, driven by primal fear and the relentless pursuit of safety. Tears blurred my vision as I pressed forward, the taste of blood and salt permeating the air. With each passing moment, the flickering light of my mask served as a grim reminder of my dwindling hope. I huddled in the darkness for what felt like an eternity, grappling with the cold and the crushing weight of uncertainty. Time became a blur, impossible to gauge in the oppressive silence of the tunnels. My dwindling air supply hung over me like a grim specter, urging me to conserve every precious breath. Yet staying put wasn't an option. Trusting those above to rescue me seemed futile, given the perilous depths I found myself in. The chance of survival grew slimmer with each passing moment, compounded by the relentless cold and my persistent bleeding. Suddenly, a shift in the tunnel's pressure jolted me into action, my pulse racing with newfound urgency. I braced myself for the worst, hoping against hope that the lurking threat would pass me by. Tears welled in my eyes, silent witnesses to the terror that gripped me. As the creature's movements drew nearer, I held my breath, my senses heightened by fear. In the darkness, I strained to discern its presence, clinging to the hope that it would overlook me in its hunt. When the strokes of movement ceased, relief washed over me, mingled with the taste of blood in my mouth. With no other option but to press forward, I steeled myself for the journey ahead. Securing my mask, I plunged into the depths once more, guided by instinct and the faint currents that whispered of escape. In the darkness, I surrendered to the ebb and flow of the water, trusting in its unseen guidance. Navigating the labyrinthine passages, I stumbled upon an unexpected discovery, a familiar air tank, a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness. Despite the looming threat, I pressed on, driven by a primal instinct to survive against all odds. With each labored breath, I fought against the weight of exhaustion, every step a struggle against the relentless current. Yet, fueled by desperation, I pressed onward, clinging to the flickering hope of salvation. Hours blurred into eternity as I forged ahead, fueled by sheer determination and the dwindling remnants of Garrett's tank. With every passing moment, the weight of my actions bore down upon me, casting doubt upon the choices that led me to this harrowing ordeal. As the air in Garrett's tank began to sour, a grim realization settled over me. I was running out of time. When I stumbled upon yet another air pocket, I discarded the tank with a resounding clang, resigned to my fate. The sound echoed through the cavern, followed by a faint gasp from somewhere deeper within. My heart pounded in my chest as I pressed myself against the wall, straining to listen over the pounding of my own heartbeat. In the eerie silence, I heard the ominous sound of wet footsteps approaching, accompanied by a strange, frog-like wheeze. I held my breath, trying to remain as still as possible, my body tense with fear. The creature paused as if sensing something amiss, while blood dripped from my arm into the water below. Thankfully, it seemed oblivious to my presence, preoccupied instead with its grisly feast. I stood frozen in place, scarcely daring to breathe as the creature eventually slunk away into the depths of the tunnel. With a mixture of terror and determination, I limped onward, each step a painful reminder of the ordeal I had endured. Guided by instinct and sheer willpower, I navigated the labyrinthine passages, my chest burning with exertion. Finally, I reached a large vertical chute, feeling a rush of anticipation as I sensed the current pulling me upwards. Yet, to my dismay, I found myself confronted with a dead end, a smooth, metallic surface that offered no escape. Desperate and exhausted, I pounded futilely against the metal, only to feel something stirring beneath the surface. Panic surged through me as unseen fingers wrapped around my ankle, threatening to drag me down into the darkness below. Summoning every ounce of strength, I fought against the encroaching darkness, clawing my way upward with renewed determination. With a final burst of effort, I managed to dislodge the metal covering, flooding the chamber with blinding light. Rescue came in the form of 4 men who pulled me to safety just as I teetered on the brink of collapse. Gasping for breath, I was overcome with a flood of relief and disbelief, my mind reeling from the magnitude of what I had endured. In the aftermath, I learned that Nora had also survived, albeit with the loss of a foot. Garrett, however, had not been as fortunate, succumbing to the treacherous depths below. As for me, I bore both physical and emotional scars from the ordeal, haunting reminders of the price of survival. In the years that followed, I sought solace in distance, leaving behind the world of diving for good. Yet, the memories of that fateful descent lingered, casting a long shadow over my newfound peace. Now, as the years have passed and the weight of silence lifts, I am compelled to share my story, a testament to the dangers that lurk beneath the surface and the resilience of the human spirit.